Hi, I'm Mara Briere. I'm a certified family life educator and the founder and president of Grow a Strong Family, and I am here to give another presentation on behalf of Grow a Strong Family. What we do is provide support to families uprooted by mental illness. Today's discussion is on guilt and responsibility, and the funding for this opportunity was awarded to us by a grant. And in this webinar, we are going to be talking about guilt and its impact on the family, who is responsible for what, and strategies for managing when guilt and responsibility undermine the family. According to Merriam-Webster, guilt is the state of one who has committed offense, especially consciously. You saw that fence when you crashed into it. Why didn't you hit the brakes sooner? Guilt is also feelings of deserving blame, especially for imagined offenses or from a sense of inadequacy. Why can't I do better? Why am I never good enough? Why do I do these things in such a half-effective way? How can I do this better? I don't even know, and I don't even know how to find out. Guilt, in this sense, is a sense of self-reproach. What causes guilt? According to Whitburn, there are 5 causes of guilt. Guilt for something you did. Well, that makes sense. Guilt for something you didn't do but want to. I really wanted to go to that fundraiser, but I just couldn't get myself out the door into the pouring rain to drive 500,000 miles to go to that fundraiser. Guilt for something you think you did. I think I did something wrong, but I'm not really sure. Guilt that you didn't do enough to help someone. I know that they were really stretched and that they could have used an extra set of hands, and I didn't offer it. Guilt that you're doing better than someone else. Oh my, I'm financially more stable now than I have ever been, and I feel bad for people that aren't as financially stable as I am, for example. Caregiver guilt. This is what happens when we care for someone who has a chronic illness. And make no mistake, mental illness is a chronic illness. There's no cure for it. There's only periods of remission and periods of major or minor episodes. It's chronic. Once someone is diagnosed with a mental illness, they are going to have that diagnosis for the rest of their lives. They are probably going to have periods of acute symptomatic behavior and periods when they are not as symptomatic, and that's what we would call remission. The feelings that come when someone is caring for somebody with a chronic illness can include ambivalence, anger, anxiety. We understand they're sick, but why can't they do more to take care of themselves? Why can't they show up for once? Why can't they participate? But I understand they have an illness. They can't always be as available as we might want them to be. We could become irritable, even depressed and sad, especially if our loved ones have a serious mental illness or a serious diagnosis of any kind, not only mental illness. We do get sad and we do get depressed because in very real ways we might in fact be losing part of the relationship we've had with that particular loved one. We can feel disgust or embarrassment because sometimes the symptoms are disgusting. For example, when somebody has a memory loss, especially with illnesses like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, people will have accidents, and then it's disgusting to have to clean them up. These are adults, not children. But sometimes, especially with the long-term use of antipsychotic medications, if someone is developing tardive dyskinesia, for example, then they will have neurological symptoms that they have no control over. They might be moving their arms or drooling or farting excessively. And in those situations, we might well feel a sense of disgust or embarrassment. Caregiver guilt also is about fear and frustration and grief. Sometimes we're afraid of our loved ones when they aren't taking their medications and they're very symptomatic. They can be very scary. Their rage could be something that's very frightening for us. And we could be really frustrated because we know that if they were still taking their medications, for example, their behavior would be better. We would be able to manage more effectively. And grief, because like, like divorce, which is when children of divorce experience their parents, it's a loss that never stops losing for them because they always are in the middle between their parents, whether they have an amicable divorce or not. They are always a reminder that the marriage or the connection or the partnership between their parents is no longer valid. It is the same way when it comes to caregiving people with chronic illnesses. We have a sense of grief. We're losing a real piece of our relationship with someone that we've known and loved, perhaps as a peer, perhaps as an equal. If there are adult children, we're grieving for what they may or may not be able to have in their lives, which is often very different than what we had originally envisioned or dreamed. We can have impatience and a lack of appreciation for what they're going through. We can lose a sense of our compassion and our empathy. We can feel very lonely because it's very isolating, especially when someone has a serious mental illness. So again, some resentment and some tiredness. These are all components that caregivers will feel, and they feel guilty about even having these feelings because if our thinking goes along the following lines. I love you, therefore I've made a commitment to take care of you. And sometimes we look at that and we go, but I don't really want to do it today, or I don't want to really do it right now. When I used to work with parents of very small children, they would often feel guilty that they were tired. They wanted a break from their babies. They wanted somebody else to do the changing of the diapers. And this is even when they had help, because it's exhausting to take care of somebody else, and it is doubly exhausting to take care of an adult and all of their affairs and have to keep track of that on top of trying to have a life and live your own life and take care of the rest of your family and participate in the rest of your family. What thoughts come to mind when you are feeling guilty? For many, many, many people, what comes to mind are what I'd like to call the if-onlys. And I have a handout on the website where we talk about what the if-onlys are. And the if-onlys are, if only I had not spoiled my loved one, if only I had seen the signs earlier, if only I'd been a better parent, if only I'd been a better partner, if only I'd been a better child, if only his doctor had been smarter, if only she hadn't gotten into drinking or drugs. But if you notice, all of these if-onlys are things we really don't have a whole heck of a lot of control over. So you have to ask yourself, who's benefiting from all of these if-onlys? Certainly not us. So what are some strategies for easing the guilt? Get rid of the should, must, ought to, and have to. If you can get rid of the shoulds, must, ought tos, and have tos, then you are doing yourself and your loved ones a favor. Because then you feel a greater sense of, I can manage this, I don't have to manage that. I can do something else or find another solution. But when we bang ourselves over the head with the should, must, have tos, and oughts, what we're really doing is we're preventing ourselves from moving forward, and we're preventing our loved ones from moving forward because we're just feeding our own sense of resentment and guilt and at times self-importance, none of which is beneficial for a healthy relationship with ourselves or anybody else on the planet. Other strategies is to admit that I am powerless over other people and that my life has become unmanageable. And this is true, and this is what 12-steppers know. So one of the things that I've done is I've created a sentence completion exercise, and it basically consists of sentences like the following. When I admit I am powerless over people, I realize that they have some responsibility for what they're doing in their lives for themselves, for example. Or something that causes me to feel powerless is when I know that my loved one would be more stable if she would only take her medication. My life is unmanageable when I keep my focus on other people, places, and things and not on my own affairs. When I admit my life is unmanageable, I am somewhat relieved because then I realize that I don't have control. I don't have to figure it all out. I don't have to anything I have to fix or repair. I only have to be refocusing on me and what's important to me. It is important for me to admit that my life is unmanageable because, well, in my case, so that I can get back to putting my priorities in a better place. and I admit my life is unmanageable that's when I become irritable. That's when I become short-tempered. That's when I become impatient. That's when the empathy is right out the window. That's when I don't care what somebody else's issues are. Those are the red flags for me when my life is becoming unmanageable. So how do we wrap ourselves around this? We become willing. How do I become willing? I become willing by recognizing that I need to take better care of myself. And for me, this could look like a walk in the woods, preparing and eating a healthy meal, calling a friend, going to a movie, anything that will help me get back to a sense of center for myself, and whatever that is for you. And again, these are located on our website. I have no control over other people, places, or things. I cannot control when others are hungry or tired. I cannot control what others think about anything. This is what powerless means to me. And I would even add that I have no control over whether they're taking their medications or they're not, because I'm not going to force feed it to them or anybody else on the planet. Most of us want the very best for the people we love, and the best we can offer may be our refusal to contribute to their path of self-destruction. Very often what I would say when my daughter would be arguing with a friend and we were away and it was the two of them going at it, and I would look at them and I would say, I can't stand to see the two people I love hurting each other, so I'm not going to participate in this, and I would exit stage left, and that typically stopped it and got them back on track. We cannot make choices for other people, even for those most important to us. We are not gods, and we can't truly know what is best for anyone else, no matter how obvious a particular course of action may seem to us at the time. This is so important. Very often we are filled with good ideas, fixes, good ways to repair damage done, but honestly, the best solution to any problem lies in the person who has the problem, not me. If I have the problem, then the best solution for me is to come up with what do I need out of this situation and how can I get my needs best met. For another way to think of this is I can tell somebody who is supposed to take their medication twice a day at a regular time, because it's a timed medication, that their outcomes would be much better if they could stick to a schedule. If they take it at 7 in the morning and they're supposed to take it at 7 at night, to stay with that schedule. How can they remind themselves? I can guide them, but the bottom line is that they're going to live with the consequences if they don't take their medication as prescribed. And maybe that's what they need in order to embrace following the directions, or maybe being on another medication. I'm not the one experiencing the consequences, then I need to understand that they have the right to do that. As long as it's not a matter of life and death, there is no reason for me to be stepping in. I am not their higher power. I am not anybody else's God. And this is true for all of us, which is why we often feel guilty, because we forget that the solutions don't lie with us, that the solutions to most of life's problems lie with the person who has the problem. One of the strategies that I really, really love is to use the work of Byron Katie, which you can find on her website, The Work. And basically what we do is we ask 4 questions. And let's say, for example, we'll use her example, he hurt me. Somebody we love, somebody we care about, very often our loved ones with mental illness, or perhaps another family member. This isn't uncommon. Family relationships get very strained whenever a family is dealing with a chronic illness, especially a chronic mental illness with its ups and downs and times of symptomatic and times of remission, never feeling like we know when the shoe is going to fall. So the first question to ask ourselves, is it true? Yes or no? Did your loved one hurt you? Yes. Can you absolutely know that it's true? Yes or no? Well, yeah, I'm hurt. How do you react? What happens when you believe that thought? My body gets tense. My tone of voice gets higher pitched. I become more clipped in my speech. I find ways to not do direct eye contact. I become irritable. I become impatient. That's what happens to me when I have the thought that somebody is hurting me. And who would I be without that thought? I would be much more relaxed, much more easygoing, much more inclined to say, hey, what's going on? Much more interested in coming up with solutions. So if I hurt myself, this is the turnaround, how would I handle that? I would first acknowledge it, that I hurt myself and that I need to come up with a better way to treat myself. What's that going to look like for me? How about if I hurt my loved one? Because sometimes that does happen, especially if we're feeling tired or resentful or impatient or irritable, or we haven't had a good night's sleep, or we've given them all that we possibly can at the moment and we're just flat out. But if I hurt them, then I have to make an amends. I have to own it. I have to say, this is what my behavior is, even if they don't do that to us. This is how we live by being healthier people. And what about the opposite? What if they didn't hurt us? What if their behavior is their behavior and it really has nothing to do with us? It has nothing to do with you. What if it's just part of what their illness looks like? How can we then turn that around? Okay, the illness hurt me. Be angry at the illness. Don't be angry at the person who is ill. This is a hard lesson and one we are going to get on later on. But this is really the bottom line. Very often we feel a tremendous amount of hurt and pain and unhappiness and sadness because of how our loved ones behave, especially when they're not stable, especially when they're not treated properly or they've gone off their medications or the side effects of the medications are a problem as well as whatever the illness looks like anyway. And if all of this is true, and very often it is, then be angry at the illness, be hurt by the illness. But the person you love, their intention is not to hurt you today any more than it was before they got sick. So keep that in mind. We are powerless over the outcome of all events involving us. This is true. This is true whether it's flooding or fire or gas explosions. We don't have control over those outcomes. All we have control over is how we are going to respond to that. So therefore, understand that not only do we have no control over how events and what the outcomes of events are, we are powerless over the lives of our friends and family members. We are not powerless over our own attitudes, our own behavior, our own self-image, our own determination, our own commitment to life. In this simple program of looking at how can I take better care of myself so that I can show up and be more available to the people I love, especially in my family. The only thing we own in this life is our attitude and our time. What you do with your time and your attitude are your only real choices, and you get to decide what that is. And this is also true for the people we surround ourselves with. The fact is, you don't have to hang in there when someone is mistreating yourself or mistreating themselves. You can use what I used when kids are fighting. I can say, you know what, I can't stand to see someone I love hurting themselves. When you stop hurting yourself, I'll be happy to have a conversation with you or be here in your life. I've had to do this with one of my loved ones who has a serious mental illness, who at times has caused tremendous self-harm. And I've had to say to her, as long as you're on this particular route, I'm not participating in it. When you get yourself back to good, I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. And that's how I frame it. I'm not going to say to her, don't do it, because that horse has already left the barn. But I am going to say, this is how I'm going to live my life. I'm here for you, but under these circumstances. I'm not going to participate in you being harmful to yourself or you being harmful to me or others. And this is where we start to look at what does responsibility look like in these kinds of situations. And that's a hard one. It's a hard one for all of us because we tend to take too much responsibility about what's going on and not give our loved ones enough responsibility. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how responsible are you feeling right now because your loved one got sick with a mental illness? That's the first question to ask yourself. And then, of course, to try to remember the 3 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it. So what does your sense of responsibility? So what I usually ask people to do is to make a list of the responsibilities that you take on to help your loved one with their healing. And this is also found in on the website and in the resource book we use, Replanning Lives, by Nancy Pizzo Boucher. So basically what we do, we'll often do the cleaning, we'll pick up their garbage, their clutter, we'll cook, we'll do their laundry for them, we'll keep track of their appointments, we'll take them from point A to point B, we'll pay for their phone plans, we'll take them to doctor's appointments, we'll take them to the pharmacy, we'll offer to make ourselves available for them in this way. What else does your sense of responsibility look like? And how much responsibility does your loved one take on to help towards their own healing? A little, some, less than you do? Make a list of responsibilities that your loved one takes to help with their own healing. Do they know how to find support? Do they have a pet? Do they have a support animal, for example? If they're bipolar or they have other mental illnesses, are they able to use a system like the health card system for bipolar disorder by Julie A. Fast, which is a great system? Do they have a RAP plan? RAPness is Wellness Recovery Action Plan that each individual can make, and they have one for families. So it's also good for the family to have that. Are they complying with their medications? Do we have an emergency plan that everybody has agreed on and can stick to? Those are all components that they can take responsibility for. Do they have a better understanding of their illness? Do they understand when their symptoms are going up? Do they ask for help? What kind of help do they ask for? How willing are they to accept help? How much do they collaborate with you? How much do they participate with you? Life is unmanageable whenever we lose perspective about what is and what is not our responsibility. And that leads us to take offense at actions that have nothing to do with us. Or we intervene when it's not appropriate. Do not take on for your loved ones which they can and should do for themselves. They are adults. That doesn't mean they're able to make adult decisions, but it does mean that for those that they can make, we give them the permission and the freedom to do so. It is always about dignity and grace and guidance and love, but doing it in its proper measure. Don't let your misplaced concern for others become intrusive, because then they will feel like you're meddling, and they will resent it, and they will shut you out. And that won't work for anybody. We want to help them care for themselves in the best way that they possibly can, and to be as respectful as possible for them and for ourselves. If it's not life-threatening, and they insist on this particular life lesson, you might want to consider, maybe I should kind of let that be. Don't confuse love with interference. We don't know how to show affection or support without giving advice, seeking to sway others' decisions, or trying to get those we love to do what we think will bring them happiness. That's not our job. That's controlling, not caring. Caring is when we really listen to what our loved ones have to say and put them in the place that enables them to achieve their dreams to the best of their ability, even if we really believe in our heart of hearts that they will never achieve that dream. They have the right to go after it, and they have the right to fall flat on their faces just like we do and pick ourselves up and move on. And they have the right to do that with our love and support, even if without our permission. They don't need our permission. What they need from us is measured guidance. They need for us to know how to let others be who they are to the best of their abilities, with love in our hearts and a lot of patience, because we need to control our own tendency to control. Again, I refer you to the work of Byron Katie. This really helps when we're feeling, if only they would listen. Once you start getting into that particular way of thinking, the if onlys, and I can't believe, and I want to, and I'm telling him, and I told her, once you get into that place, it's a good time to use the work by Byron Katie. What level of responsibility do you want to take in helping support your loved one with mental illness, or with any chronic illness for that matter? None, as much as you have to really look at that. For example, one of the things that I did with one of my loved ones When she was very unstable, medication was not very helpful, even though she was compliant. She still was comorbid alcoholic. So what I did was, instead of giving her cash, I gave her gift cards. Now, granted, she could sell those gift cards and get cash that way, but it was one step removed. I didn't want to enable. I did want her to have food, however, so I would get her gift cards to the local supermarket. I did do a family wrap. I did read I Am Not Sick, I Don't Need Help, so that I could learn different communication skills, which is beneficial for all of us. Anything that will help us be more effective and efficient is going to allow us to get that controlling behavior under control and to learn the rest of the skills that we now need in order to manage what is it like to care for and love someone with a chronic illness, especially a chronic mental illness, and still be available for the rest of the family. And we want to empower the rest of the family by sharing what we're learning and sharing the tools and resources. Replanning Lives Uprooted by Mental Illness by Nancy Pizzo-Boucher is a fabulous resource. It's why we've created this whole program. The 5 Wishes, this is the new Living Will Healthcare Proxy Form. What's wonderful about the 5 Wishes is that whoever the healthcare proxy is has absolutely no doubt what your real wishes are. This is true for anybody at any age. It's a good document to have. But it's especially important with our loved ones who have chronic mental illnesses, because you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what can happen at any time. So get their wishes in writing, get your own wishes in writing. And by the way, Grow a Strong Family is a partner with the Honoring Choices program, which offers the 5 wishes. So take advantage of what we have to offer. And finally, if the family's way of dealing with mental illness is not in the best interest of all its members, then it is not the best solution. We don't sacrifice the whole family for one family member. What we do instead is we integrate the whole family in this new typical that we are now on. We're taking the fork in the road, and we're taking the road less traveled. But statistically, 20% of the population will at some point have a mental illness, have a diagnosis of a mental illness, whether it's anxiety or depression or OCD, which is an anxiety-based disorder, or grief that goes on and on and on, and you can't get yourself out of it, whatever it is, at some point. So since 1 in 5 people at some point in their lives is going to have a mental illness, doesn't it behoove all of us to acquire ways of being more efficient, get over the guilt, have a proper place for how much am I responsible for and how much are they responsible for, and going from there. So in this webinar, we talked about guilt and its impact on the family, where we looked for ways to reduce the impact of guilt, assuring one another and ourselves that we're doing everything we possibly can to maintain a balance between them and us. Who is responsible for what? Very important. If we can say, look, he keeps doing this, that's okay. Let him do that. It's not a matter of life and death. Strategies for managing responsibility undermine the family. And we talked about the work by Parent Katie, and we talked about the powerlessness. There are a lot of exercises on the website that we invite you to visit and share and take out. And if you want more information on Grow a Strong Family, visit us online, and you can email us at growastrongfamilyinc@outlook.com, or you can also call and talk to us at 781-405-8376. Take what you like and leave the rest. We're not responsible for how the content or the presentation is used.